Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to debut Heal Season 2, Episode 1. So, this first episode from the second season needs to go on and accomplish the task of giving us all of the aftermath of the Season 1 finale while also giving us a blueprint or guide of where all of our characters are heading for this season. I, of course, would be excited about certain characters that weren't used all that much in the first season getting seemingly much more a prominent role in this second season here. Characters like Eddie Earl, who I barely even knew who he was. It was like, okay, that's the sponsorship guy. That is to just be kind of the money man. And it seems that in this second season, he's getting used a lot more. To eventually have him be like kind of part of certain promotional videos, or to have him do some ringside things, which I'll be more specific about when we get into the more spoiler parts. Ricky Rabies, I assumed would also be a character that it's like, okay, we're gonna forget that this character really exists, and then he'll be like random here on episode, random here on some other. And it seems that this character is to be much more prominently used, and I could be a lot more excited about that. Because, of course, my whole entire thing about the first season of Heels is like, okay, where is Ricky Rabies going to show up? And it seems that now we're going to see him a lot more often. For this first episode, I'm like, okay, like, where was Apocalypse? The character that goes on and gives us like this little side thing of his character, but then we never see anything of this character again. And now, like, he's not even seemingly on this show. I'm not quite sure if he's going to be in the season. And for this first episode back, we kind of have certain characters being more of the focus, and then everybody else is just kind of there. And I was like, well, that kind of sucks, because the first season kind of felt like there was a really good flow of things, where like this second season is kind of bouncing all over the place. And like the stories aren't really all that good, but it's good enough. And so yeah, like there's just a lot of bouncing around going on. It kind of feels like Yellowstone to me, where I'm gonna have to break down certain characters instead of like just the overall story, and that just kind of sucks. So with that said, my overall grading of this first episode back is to be good or solid good, and eventually it'll get better. There's just a lot of stuff just kind of going on that they have to get into for this first episode, and it'll get better. It'll get there. We had kind of characters besides Jack, Ace, and Crystal kind of get weirdly used. Like, we had Charlie, who is to kind of be this this other wrestling promoter, and he of course is to be used in the episode as this kind of like reaction guy, where he ends up doing these kind of goofy internet videos. And I was like, okay, that was kind of a waste of using this character. We had both Willie and Wild Bill, who ends up trying to guide Jack in this episode, trying to kind of ask him, it's like, well, hey, where are things going? It's like, where are things going to go with this promotion? And Jack is so much focused on right now being the glue to his entire family, trying to keep every bouncing ball up in the air, that I honestly feel that the DWL is probably the last thing on his mind. And hopefully at some point, like, he can kind of either course correct that, or hopefully he's just going to have to give over power to certain people to depend on them. Like, it kind of feels like he's doing that with Wild Bill in this episode, to kind of share the story with someone. So for Jack, Ace, and Crystal, who kind of seem to have like their own kind of big journey in this first episode, we have Jack, who, like I said, he's kind of the glue to trying to keep his family desperately together, going on and trying to get back with Stacy, but then is to also try to figure out where his brother has disappeared to. We also have Jack, who is trying to keep control of where his promotion is going, but then also is to hope that people can prove themselves, so that way he can not have to tweak so many things for this wrestling promotion. We have Ace. Ace goes on and is to really just kind of be done with everything, to the point of him packing up his Xbox and everything else to go on this road trip, this journey, which will lead him to possibly where he's going to head for this whole entire season. We have Crystal, that specifically in this first episode is like, well, hey, you have the title, now you have to prove that you should have this. Because we have this character who has kind of just been this valet, and she's kind of made these promises about her be willing to do anything to help out this promotion, but it's like, okay, like actions or a thousand words, rather than you just kind of making all these promises that we don't know if you're going to live up to that. So that's where kind of the main three characters are heading throughout this episode. We have Wild Bill and Willie, who kind of have their own little story of Wild Bill being with the fair woman named Constance, and I'll get into more of that stuff when we get into the spoilers. Other than that, yeah, I think everything else is kind of covered as much as I want to go on and talk about this in a non-spoiler sense. Let's go into spoilers so I can kind of get that out of the way. Let's go on. Solid, good to good episode, if I haven't said that already. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this episode. I realized in the last time that I did a review, I didn't even get into the normal countdown and whatever. I don't know. It's kind of just been a while. I've been very rusty. And then also, I never know really what to all say for all of these things. So it ends up just kind of blah for right now. Hopefully I can get back into the rhythm and pattern and whatever. So with that said, let's kind of get into the morning of it all for this episode. So we have Willie, who is going on and getting up for the morning, having both her husband and daughter kind of greet her for the day. She goes on and hugs and kisses her family, and we of course have her daughter, who's like, well, hey, like, yeah, you should really give me as much hugs and kisses as you can, because soon I'm going to be off to college. And Willie's telling her, it's like, well, hey, like, yeah, you need to get your grades up to be able to even think about going to college right now. All the while, Willie's getting all these answering machine like things, because we, I guess, still have an answering machine for this one family that goes on to have certain people complain about their 8 months behind in certain bills, that Willie's supposed to pay for them, and Willie is to, of course, be like, well, yeah, like, since we did that whole like fair kind of fair thing, yeah, like I'm sure everybody's going to call on us now because they think we have money. So Willie goes on and is to run off uh, to get to the DWL, all while both daughter and husband are like, so she still works at that place? It's like, yeah, I guess she does. Like, I thought she was going to quit. I guess not. So Willie runs off to call Wild Bill, of course, kind of asking about, like, well, hey, you weren't, like, high or drunk or something the night before. And Wild Bill's like, no. And Wild Bill, the more and more he's talking to Willie, Willie starts to pick up on the fact that he's whispering, and so Willie calls Bill on it, and Bill has to admit that he's with a lady, he's with a woman, Constance, who is to be the woman from the fair. And now, while Bill has to go on and get a check from Constance to pay off the DWL, so Bill goes on and is to talk to Constance and kind of butter her up, like, hey, you want to touch it one more last time? As Constance like, well, no, like, you can come to my place and we can kind of do something there. So we have Constance, who hands over the check because supposedly she was to get so distracted because she was, of course, to be romanced by Wild Bill. So, and it seems that we're starting to get, like, Constance and other people who are actually consistently coming to the shows. I'm like, okay, so we can have this character eventually kind of play into some kind of more importance in this show, I'm hoping. So, we have Jack. Jack, of course, is just kind of sleeping on his couch. He's just so exhausted. And he all of a sudden gets a call from Stacy about a calendar arrangement where Jack is supposed to be at some meeting somewhere for his tractor job, his other job. So Jack is like, well, no, that's supposed to be on the 11th. And Stacy's like, well, today is the 11th. And so Jack is like, oh my God. Jack starts to get all of his clothes together. He has this toothbrush that is in his mouth that he's consistently brushing his teeth and spitting it out the window, having a whole thing of toothpaste all over the side of his car. Jack is scrambling. And so Jack is also talking to Stacy about how they have an appointment to meet with Thomas's principal, talking about the fight that they, of course, are to have. And in all honesty, I'm going to go into that story, but I want to try as much as possible to not have my own opinion about bullying or fighting or whatever in schools. Like, I'm going to try to get through that bit of story as quickly as humanly possible, because realistically, like, there's a lot of people that have their own opinions about whatever that garbage is, because you probably have a kid in schools and so on and so forth. So, with that said, I'm going to just try to get past that as quickly as possible. Because a lot of people could be like, well, yeah, Jack was right, or the principal was right, or everybody's right, or everyone's wrong. I don't know. I could care less. So, when we have gone on to talk about Jack, let's now talk about Ace. So, Ace is to, of course, go on to decide to take everything in his home, even his Xbox that he possesses, and he decides to go on this road trip. We have Ace that is listening to these kind of motivational speaker characters to go on and on about things, and Ace is Googling what transcendent means. And so Ace wants to go on and hopefully find himself while going on this camping trip. So Ace decides that he is, with whatever money he has left on him, go on this journey. And Ace at first goes to this gas station, and Ace is to need to use this restroom, and the associate that's behind the counter, the clerk, is to go on and tell Ace, like, well, hey, if you go on and buy something, I'll let you use the restroom. And Ace mentions, like, well, hey, I already went to one of your gas stations from this other location, and I bought a bunch of a bunch of Cokes from there. And so you're telling me that I can't go on and I can't go to this other gas station that's from your company and get liquid from there, but I can't relieve myself here. And we have the clerk who's like, well, hey, I'm not in the restroom business. Like, I'm just this convenience store clerk. So Ace goes on and he's frustrated from really not wanting to spend any more excess money. And so he just finds this sewer drain and just decides to relieve himself there, having the clerk come out with a baseball bat, like, well, hey, like, you better take that hose and clean this up. And so Ace does. Ace then is to get into his car and is to dump all of the Coke bottles and leave as if he's littered. Ace then is to go on and consistently get voicemails from Jack the entire day. Ace at some point will listen to them, maybe not listen to them, but he deletes them all. Tons and tons of voicemails that Jack has sent Ace, which Ace consistently ignores. So Ace then goes on to go to this outdoor sports store. Ace goes on to ask the kind of the man who of course is to own said business, and trying to figure out if this guy actually legitimately has a name or not, but it doesn't really seem that he does, or I can't really find it. So doesn't look like I saw it anywhere. So Ace goes on and speaks to this associate and is asking if this rain jacket is to be like the best rain jacket for preventing like rain and stuff like that. And the clerk is like, or the associate is like, yeah, it's a rain jacket. Yeah, that's what it does. And so Ace is going on and telling this guy where he's heading, and so the guy is like, well, like, you're going to that location and you have like nothing really like with you, do you have any kind of like bear prevention, any bear spray? And Ace is like, really, do I need something like that? And he's like, well, yeah, like there's bears there all the time. So the guy is like, well, hey, do you have like hiking shoes? Do you have like hiking boots? And Ace is like, well, no, I just have these soccer ones, and I think that they're fine. Like, I broke them in recently, so I think they're good. And the guy's like, oh my god, like, you don't have a clue now, do you? And so Ace is also going on and asking this guy, it's like, well, hey, do you have tents here? And the guy's like, of course we have tents. We have it's an outdoor store. Yes, yeah. So, like, the more and more that Ace is to ask this guy anything about his store, the more that this guy is just so unreluctant to want to really help this guy out, or is to just say, it's like, well, yeah, like, I'm only doing this whole outdoor store or this whole sporting goods thing because I need to pay off certain bills from my family or this and that. So, like, this guy isn't the normal traditional, like, a retail associate, so to speak. Like, this guy is to go on and just be like, like, I'm just doing this to pay the bills. So Ace then goes on after the journey of the getting the right coat and the right backpack and going seemingly backpacking. Ace. Oh, we also have to go into the whole diner thing. So let me get this out of the way. So Ace is going on and he's at this campground area and he's kind of doing all this backpacking. So Ace eventually goes to this diner and Aces go on and order simply toast. And the woman at the waitress at the diner kind of looks at him and is like, toast? Really? And Ace is like, yeah, I just want to enjoy some toast. Just give me that. So the woman's like, well, okay, and walks off. So the guy sitting next to Ace in another table is like, well, hey, like, seems like a big guy like you, like, you need something more than a thing of toast. Like, hey, how about I go on and how about I pay it forward and I help you out and I buy you dinner. Seems like a good thing to do. And Ace is like, well, hey, man, like, I don't know what shenanigans that you're trying to pull, but you go on and you have a s'more with somebody else. And the guy's like, no, I'm just trying to be nice. I'm just trying to be helpful, guy of the road kind of thing. And Ace is like, I'm not falling for that. So the guy just kind of gets put off by Ace, and so he's like, oh, okay. So he just slaps the money of his meal on the table, and he starts to walk off. Ace steals the money from the table, and so by the time the Ace and this guy goes on to leave this restaurant, we then have the waitress that is grabbing the guy from the other table. It's like, well, hey, man, like, you didn't pay for your meal. And the guy's like, yeah, I did. It was on the table. And there's this back and forth argument. And so the guy gives in to the woman and is to hand over the money of the payment of the food. The waitress goes on and is to tell this guy to never come back here. And the guy is like, okay, well, that's fine, and just walks off. We have Ace that goes on to realize that he's like, like, I did something that I want to just kind of take back now. So Ace walks over to the guy and gives him back the money to his meal. It's like, well, hey, man, like, I don't even know why I did that. And, like, you know what? I'm really sorry that I went on and I took money from you. And the other guy is just like, well, you know what? How about you just kind of keep the money? It seems like you need this money more than I do. And so Ace is just kind of getting more and more upset about this. And so Ace is just like, no, like, I'm not going to take your freaking money. So Ace goes back into the restaurant and is to dump the money into the tip jar, and he walks away, going back to his outdoor journey to eventually go into this tent and go camping. So, again, with the million of voice messages that Jack continues to send Ace, getting more and more upset to the point of Jack yelling and screaming about him putting a pumpkin on his head and running around naked to hopefully get Ace to come back. So, as well as also Jack going to his mother and Ace's mother and finding out that, like, Ace has left and took his Xbox. That was the big thing. So Jack continues to send these goofy and weird messages to try to get Ace to come back. Ace is watching along as the DWL is doing all these wrestling promotions, and eventually the main event for the night of the DWL. So Ace listens to one last voice message that Jack had sent, and while getting out of his tent, and Ace, because of how dark it is, eventually slips and falls to desperately cling on to this cliff of this like mountain, like this cliff like thing. So Ace goes on to desperately cling on to fall and start hitting these branches and these bushes and trees and all these things. And then Ace finally falls to a point of him being able to just kind of lay in the spot. Once Ace is trying to recover from his fall, he realizes that he has a leg injury and maybe a number of other things. So Ace now realizes that he is to be effed at this moment. Really, Ace turned heel on a cliff, and the cliff was like, no. So now, of course, to go on and to cover what is happening with Jack and eventually what is happening with Crystal. So we have Jack that, of course, to go on and have a meeting with this principal about how Jack is to punch someone, and that is to be a whole bullying, fighting situation, which eventually would escalate into a school shooting. And I'm like, well, yeah, like, it seems that we are to have so many of those at this current moment, and like, that is, I guess, the one easy thing to just kind of bring up right now, sadly enough. So Jack is to go on and have this whole story about how a person had gone on to stand up to a bully and break some bones and things of this guy, to have the finishing up of the story learn that that bullied person went on to become a better upstanding citizen to the community, instead of being a bully for the rest of his life. With the whole kind of like the pulling of the pants story and all that jazz. So Jack is trying to go on and say that, like, his son needs to defend himself or stand up to people, and the principal is just like, well, hey, like the whole thing is just about one person punching another, and that's all that matters. Like, the rest of the story, who cares? This kid decided to punch another kid, so he needs to be punished. We also have this, besides the principal, we have this therapist that is coming in and saying that because simply Jack is to be in a wrestling environment, that there is to be violence within pro wrestling. So that is the reasoning for Thomas being violent with other people. It's like, Jack is like, no, like... And so Jack goes on and is to try to convince this principal and this therapist that, like, that their son has been disciplined, like this is all over. And the principal is to go on and just be like, well, no, this can escalate it into this, and like, you really need to go on and really discipline your son. And so the more and more that Jack is trying to talk to this principal, the more and more Jack is just like, okay, whatever we can do to just get this over as soon as possible. After this whole appointment is all done and over with, we have Jack and we have Stacy, who are kind of arguing in the parking lot, and Stacy and Jack are having this kind of moment of, like, Stacy not being sure who Jack is anymore, and how she wants to just kind of get back to where they are. And Jack is just consistently asking Stacy, it's like, well, hey, like, come back home. And Jack then realizes, like, well, hey, like, I'm not the man I used to be, since after my father had taken a gun to his own head. Like, I'm not that same guy. So Jack is telling Stacy, it's like, well, hey, I'm trying like I'm really trying here. I'm doing all the things that you want me to do. Like I showed up at this appointment even though I wanted nothing to do with it. Like I'm here. Like I'm being I'm being with you and and like and but I'm just trying to be a dude. The whole the whole thing when Jack gets to the whole dude thing, I'm like, well, what is he, like the Big Lebowski? Like, is he like Jeff Bridges now? Or I can just see the memes of all of a sudden like Jack is now like the Big Lebowski. He's gonna be like, hey, I'm the dude. Like I'm the dude. So like that was the goofiest thing I think of that whole first episode was him just kind of breaking down and just saying that he's a dude. Uh, but I get it. Like there's not a good way to deliver that kind of line, and either way, it's gonna just come off as goofy. But like kind of Jack just saying that he's just a dude and he's just trying to do everything that he can. So we have Jack that is also saying that he's like the glue that's trying to keep everything together, and Ace is gone, and the one thing that his dad told him to do was like, hey, make sure you look after Ace. And so yeah, so Jack is just kind of everywhere right now. So Jack makes his way into the DWL, and we of course have Willie getting on Jack to just be like, well, hey, like, where is the story of the DWL? Where is this going? Because I need something to sell for the next thing we have going. Like, give me something to sell. It's like, tell me something now. And Jack's like, yeah. And so Willie's just like, okay, just. So Jack goes in and is to kind of rally the troops and kind of and kiss their butts. And so Jack goes on to mention to like certain characters that I guess are the new guys for the season. We have some guy that is just to be called the dad in the IMDb credits, and Jack says like, well, hey, I didn't even see your match, but I heard it was good. So like, I don't know if was the dad in the first season. I don't know. Maybe he was. I'm not quite sure. Like, he was kind of a forgotten character by me. I was like, is this guy a new person? Did they just shimmy this new guy in here? But yeah, so we had Jack going on and just starting to kind of praise everybody. He kind of quickly tells both Willie and Debbie, it's like, well, hey, like, you guys did a good job. But then he goes on and is to start to eventually make his way to Crystal, and he's like, well, hey, like, Crystal, like, you did your best from this whole situation between me and my brother and all the family drama from that, and like and he really appreciated it, and blah 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 blah. So we have just Jack is going down the line, and he's thanking everybody from all of the Ace drama, and also everybody like kind of pitching in even when they were hurt, like while Bill, of course, being hurt in that match. So, or being having the issues that he was having in that match. Jack goes on to just kind of thank everybody and kind of talking about Ace, and then he just kind of walks off. Eventually, Jack goes on to tell everybody where the story is going to head for the next promotion. And so Jack says, like, well, hey, we're going to try to rewind everything and have kind of Crystal not be the champ. And Crystal's like, what? So Crystal runs off to try to tell Jack, it's like, well, hey, like I like, I want this shot. Like, I want this opportunity. And Jack is like, well, yeah, but you were crying and whining before about how you'll do anything for the DWL. And, like, I want to see, like, I want to see you do that. And so Crystal is just like, well, yeah, but, like you're really carrying on about that one time that I cried. And so Jack's like, yeah. And so, like, we just kind of have this really just small, goofy dialogue. And so Willie is telling Crystal, like, hey, shut up. Like, you don't know what he's thinking. You don't know what he's going to do with your character. So Willie is really just telling Crystal right now, it's like, hey, you need to earn your spot. Like, you need to make Jack realize that you're putting in the effort here. So Willie is going on and telling, like, Crystal, it's like, well, hey, like, you need a timeout to think about what you did, kind of thing. So Crystal is having to now realize that she needs to go on and create a character for herself, and to also get some wrestling time in, so that way she can be able to have the cardio or the stamina to be able to do a 30-minute match, because we have, like, Iron Man matches and all kinds of crazy wrestling matches, and for us to possibly realize that Crystal, like, we don't know how much she's going to be able to do all these things, if she's going to be like the wrestler that she really wants to be. Like, she now has to prove it. Which, in all honesty, Crystal just quickly becomes basically the Becky Lynch of this episode. I don't want to just have that just be just like that's who she is, because eventually she does become her own person, but a huge amount of comparisons is just kind of Becky Lynch, the man persona, basically being used as Crystal here. So Crystal kind of turns heel from herself and just becomes Becky Lynch. People are just turning heel. Like, Jack is just kind of turning heel from his family and is so much more focused on just desperately trying to be this wrestler that he needs to be. Ace is turning a heel on a Cliff. Crystal is now turning a heel on who she used to be, and is to now try to be this new persona person, aka Becky Lynch. We have this quick moment where Crystal, when she gets out of her car, is to see Bobby, and they hug, and Crystal is to mention how Bobby is in her corner, but then we kind of quickly forget that Bobby even exists, besides him stating that his injury is healing so quickly. And we have of course, Ricky Raby that goes on and tells him, it's like, well, hey, like, do you have like a God, I have to say this in a kind of a PG way. Do you have some milk coming out of that leg? do you have a woman's chesty coming out of that leg? God, ugh, I hate. Why can't we just swear on YouTube videos? It'd be great. Who knows, whatever freaking stupid things or freaking swear words anyways. So, moving on. So Crystal goes on and gets in the ring, and she's like, okay, like, I need to go like 12 minutes with this other wrestler, and now Diego is kind of just sitting in the crowd, and Crystal's like, well, hey, like, can I wrestle you for 15 minutes? And Diego's like, I don't know if I can last that long. Kind of doing these kind of like almost like sex jokes and whatever. So we have Wild Bill, who's going on and talking to Ricky Raby about how they can have podcasts and ring announcers, and how they can really try and improve the show. And in all honesty, I'm sure a number of all these things that they were going on and talking about in this moment were, of course, to possibly be any of the complaints that anybody was to have gone on and said about the first season about how there weren't ring announcers. In all honesty, the whole ring announcing thing, there's a double-edged sword to it, because we have ring announcers, which I was like, great, this sounds really awesome. But then again, a big problem with ring announcers is it kind of cuts the dialogue that's going on in the ring off. Because in the first season, there was a lot of dialogue going on between the wrestlers in the ring, and I actually enjoyed that. I really liked that. Because in other scenarios, you wouldn't be getting that. Like, God, what was the other one? Glow. Like, that was a really great thing about Glow, how we were getting the dialogue of the characters in the ring, in the match. But again, the ring announcing thing could be kind of a good plus. It's really nice to have both Eddie and both Ricky Raby both being used as the ring announcers, because I was really excited about that anyways. And plus also, knowing good and well that, of course, Phil Brooks had gone on and doing some announcing in either both the WWE when he was injured, and the thing I loved most was when, of course, CM Punk was in a announcing role, and there was this one match where John Cena was kind of moving things on the announcer's table, and CM Punk was upset because John Cena had moved CM Punk's Coke or Diet Pepsi or something, and I thought that was hilarious. So, but then also we of course have CM Punk, who has done a number of announcing for other kind of I think it was like kind of MMA promotions. I don't know the actual name of it, but anyways, moving on. So, as well as hopefully we can get something really interesting coming out of Eddie also. We'll see where that goes. So, we let's get to the big like commercial thing, and eventually to the match, so we can kind of get everything kind of done and over with. Again, we kind of get these glimpses of Charlie, who goes on to do like reactions of the commercial promoting thing that they're doing, and is to also do this like goofy random video, and people are kind of watching that and like, ooh, wow. So we have Wild Bill, who goes on to talk to Jack about, hey man, like, I have this huge notebook. I want to go on and give you all of my like experiences of having a number of days on the road, and here's all my experience that I can go on and help you better learn how to write stories, and like we can work together. Like, hey man, like you don't know anything about anything, and that's not a bad thing. Like, I want to help you out. Like, so we get Jack, who goes on and gives into like Wild Bill's experience, and also like I just wanted to see this anyways. Like, I wanted to see somebody working with Jack on story anyways, and that was the one thing that I kind of harped about on the first season, where I'm like, well, hey, like, Jack needs to give up something. Like, we have to make it look like Jack is working together with all of his wrestlers in this promotion, and that's what I wanted all along, is for him to just like go on and trust everybody, of kind of giving them these little tasks or these little things, and that's what I wanted. So we have this commercial like thing, or this kind of promotion like thing. I'm not sure exactly where it goes. It's either on TV or it could be on the internet. I'm not sure. So we have Eddie Earl that's going on and being like the kind of the mean Gene Okerlund, or is to kind of be the Tony Schiavone kind of character here, where Eddie is going on and mentioning kind of what's going on for the next big triple threat match. That is to be this big ladder match that is to basically be a copy and paste of what had happened in the season 1 finale. And so we have Eddie going on and explaining about like the atrocities of what had happened, and so they're going to go on and do this rematch to kind of reset things and go on and strip Crystal the title. And so we have Eddie who is going on and talking about all of this, and that gives certain people time to go and kind of butt in. We have kind of Jack, who's kind of laughing about certain things. We have Crystal coming in, who's setting up who her character is going to be, that she's just going to be Crystal Tyler for here on in. And she's kind of wanting to state that she's going to kind of put she's going to be this talent rather than just being this girl that is going to just be this bunny or Tits McGee or whoever. And so we have Wild Bill that goes on and chimes in, and he is to go on and mention how he was poisoned. And I thought that was kind of funny. He was like, yeah, I was poisoned by Ace and Jack, and they were working together. Like, I was like, okay, all right. So we have Ace and we have Jack, and we have Jack and Ace who were poisoning Wild Bill, supposedly. So Jack gets up and he goes on and he does his usual like shtick about going after Wild Bill and all that, whatever. I don't remember what all Jack said there, but he is kind of goofily talking and chanting or whatever, or chattering or whatever. Let me reset myself a little bit. So we get to the match. So we had Eddie set up in the little commercial that if Ace comes to the ring, like, they're willing to have him kind of be the triple threat of this whole thing. But if he doesn't come, then it'll just be Wild Bill versus Jack Spade. Or they're going to open it up to any of the other wrestlers that are to be on this promotion. It's like, well, hey, here's an open challenge. So it gets to the time of the match, and of course Ace doesn't show because he's off a cliff somewhere. So we instead have Eddie, who is to go on and say, it's like, well, it seems that since now Ace is no longer here, we just have to have this be an open challenge to any of our wrestlers back in the back, any of our men in the back. And we, of course, have Crystal who answers the call, and she's like, well, hey, I have a DWL contract, and, like, I'm going to step in, and I'm going to be the third of this triple threat. So here's where it all of a sudden quickly transitions to now having both Ricky Raby and Eddie Earl kind of pushed into these announcing tables, and they're starting to call this action. I'm like, okay, like, this seems kind of like a weird setup, but you just kind of have this going on now. That seems very weird. So we have Crystal, who is to kind of come in, and she is to be in this kind of disguise as if she's to say that she's just some audience member, but then she tears away her disguise, and she is to now have this kind of tank top that just says Crystal on it, and just has a bunch of random garbage that makes no sense on her gear. So she kind of comes off like a Lita or like a Becky Lynch, kind of random-ish, kind of hodgepodge of like all these kind of female wrestlers. And I'm like, okay, like, it'll be interesting to see if that's going to be her regular, like, gear, or if she's going to switch and do, like, something different, maybe something that is to be like kind of a feminine gear or whatever, like whatever she goes on and does. Like I'm really excited about where this character is going to go. So Crystal goes on to continue to kind of barge her way into this match again, like she had done in the other match, of kind of taking the title away from these men. So we of course have the whole like Jack and Wild Bill, who's like, well, I'm doing this under protest, or like, well, hey, like you're a woman, like go back to the kitchen and all that garbage. So we have Crystal, as soon as the match starts, we have Crystal who just kicks Wild Bill right out of the ring. I'm like, yeah! and we have Wild Bill who's like, this is witchcraft! As he's getting out of the match on a stretcher. And I was like, man, this is hilarious. So Jack is now going on and having to fight Crystal here. And so we would, of course, have Jack, who goes on and gets the ladder and tries to drag it in the ring, and Crystal goes on and does this baseball slide, and immediately, like, Jack gets hit with the ladder. So we have the commentators are like, well, yeah, like Jack is getting the ladder, but the ladder gets used against him, and this and that. So we start to see Crystal's moveset a little bit. We get like the Crystal Cutter, which a lot of people, if they know like RKO from Randy's moveset, or if you know like Diamond Dallas Page, like the Diamond Cutter, same thing. We have, when the ladder is to be kind of set up in the ring, we get Crystal to also use the triangle choke, which is basically a common UFC move, but I've also seen like the Undertaker use that as, I think they call it the Hell's Gate in WWE, when Undertaker was of course wrestling. And so Crystal ends up using a submission in a ladder match, and I'm like, this makes no sense. I'm like, when is it ever going to be that somebody uses a submission in a ladder match? But I'm like, okay, whatever, let's go with this. So Jack goes on to tap, and of course we have the ring announcers that are like, well, hey, like, this isn't a normal match, like Crystal can't win this way. So Jack goes on to pass out from being under this submission for far too long, and so Crystal goes on to climb the ladder to then have Wild Bill, who is to try and chase after, of course, to try and dump the ladder. We also had Jack go on and do this really cool, God, what was it? The military press, and I was like, ooh, all right. And so I was like, all right, this is really cool. But eventually that like goes all for naught. We also had like Jack was like, when Jack was wrestling with Crystal, and there was some like really good spots there, how he kind of like makes her like eat the turnbuckle and all that stuff was really good. I really enjoyed it. I liked how like Jack was really overpowering a smaller character, and I liked the methodical way that they were going about this match. So, getting to the end of it, we then have Crystal, who is holding on to the rope of this belt, and so she has the belt in her hands and then puts the belt in between her legs, and then once Wild Bill tosses the ladder, Crystal is now kind of dangling on this rope, and she gets to one side where the rope ends and is now just kind of holding herself onto this kind of balcony, and it's like, yeah, like, I won this belt, it's mine, man. It's like, yeah, I did it. And everybody's applauding, but like, yeah, she won. She rightfully won the title. And so after that, we then go on to having like Wild Bill and both Jack like holding beers, and they're all or they're both really uh just happy about the end result. It's like, well, yeah, like she earned it this time, and so like we had to give it to her as the right move anyways. And so kind of just reconfirming the decision that they had already made. And so yeah, so it all kind of led to that kind of wrapping up and just kind of being pleased about what had all gone on. And I think that goes on to kind of just cover everything. We also had Crystal, who was kind of sharing beers with the rest of the guys, and that's how just kind of everything plays off. I think we also had a moment where Jack was just so upset with what was going on with Ace that there was some dialogue between him and Stacy about Ace being gone. And like other than that, I think that was kind of it for most of this episode. Beyond like Jack kind of driving around and leaving messages and consistently trying to get to Ace and saying like, well, hey, I'm gonna keep giving you messages. I'm gonna keep sending these messages, trying to get you to come back. And Ace wasn't having any of it. So and then I think that covers everything. And plus, also, the more I talk, the more that this is almost the length of the episode anyway. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.